What's going on, guys? My name is Ryan. Today I have another review roundup. I have 3 more movies that I've recently checked out, 2 in the theaters and 1 at home. That's been out for just a little bit, but I finally got a chance to check that one out. So the first of those movies is Y2K, which is a sci-fi romantic comedy, and it's the new A24 film from Kyle Mooney. This is his directorial debut. It stars Jaden Martell, Julian Dennison, and Rachel Zegler, and it's about 2 teenage boys who go out to a New Year's Eve party on the last night of 1999, and they're there just celebrating this party, hamming it all up. You have one kid that is really crushing on Rachel Zegler, and they're on the fight for their life as they have technology that comes alive and starts killing everyone at the party. Now, when I first saw the trailer for this, it reminded me a little bit of Bodies, Bodies, Bodies in a way. I love the soundtrack to this film. It has so many different artists that I remember during those times. You have Fatboy Slim, you have Korn, Limp Bizkit, you have Closing Time, you have Chumbawamba, you have Brian McKnight. There's so many good songs, and there's so many things in callback to that year of 1999. You have the video store with VHS tapes, DVDs. I love that touch. Believe it or not, there were times, folks, where we went to an actual store and we rented movies at a video store, and I love doing that. It's great that they had that touch in the film. You have burned CDs in here. I used to do that all the time. I used to go on LimeWire, download songs, and make my own mixes. I love doing that, so I love that they had that touch there. They also had AOL and AIM chat. You had the screen name and the chat rooms. Loved all that. I loved all the callbacks to that time period because it reminded me of when I was a teenager. It's a very over-the-top film. There's a lot of comedy in here. I don't think my audience really got all the comedy. I think I had maybe a little bit of an older audience that maybe just didn't really get it. I really loved the comedy. I thought there were many times, especially from Julian Dennison, where he had his moments that just made me really laugh. He's trying to get his friend laid, and he loves Rachel Zegler. So just those little moments. He even has a point where he turns on the thong song, and I was like, oh my gosh, I remember this by Cisco. That was like the big song back then. I probably shouldn't have been watching the music video back then because when it came out, I was like 10, 11 years old. But I remember that song, and it was just a song that it just lives on forever. It's never a song that I've ever forgotten and out of my mind, but I remember that was a popular song, and you definitely have to stay tuned for the end credits because there's something that involves Julian Dennison at the end of the film in which there's a music video, and I was like, this is just completely funny. So he was a top character in here that I really did like. But with the drawbacks of some of those characters is there is moments where characters aren't on screen as much, which I wish they were a little bit because some of that comedy relief was a little bit missed, but there were parts in here that definitely made me laugh. There's a porta potty scene that completely made me laugh, playing a Brian McKnight song, and it made me bust out laugh so loud. And it's just really good humor. I think that's what really makes this film just a really fun film. Just the nostalgia. There's a special guest in here that I won't name, that when this person showed up, I was like, yes, I knew who it was right away. And the music that was incorporated with that said person, I was like, yes, this is awesome. It's definitely an over-the-top story, very wonky, not like a crazy, twisty kind of film, artsy film that you would see from an A24, but more so a simpler film that you can turn your brain off, have a good time with. There's some wonky moments, some weird over-the-top moments. The story isn't the greatest, but it's just a good time, and especially if you can relate to a lot of things that are really going on during that period. And if you remember when we were going to switch to 2000, how much people were really worried about what was going to happen to the technology. Was it going to crash? What was going to happen? There were so many things happening during that time period, and I think this movie, it really incorporates a lot of that type of stuff that was going on during that time period, and they just do a really good job with it. And I like the fact that it has a little bit of gore and kind of horror moments in here. It's not really a horror film, but there are moments where it's a little bit gory in that fact, but it's not over the top in the gore, just enough to really kind of entertain those that like horror and like that kind of thing. But I think the fact that it has so much genres kind of meshed into one, I think it works well for what they're trying to accomplish. I think this movie knew what it was, and I had a really good time with it. So as far as a score for it, I would give it a 3.5 out of 5. Next movie that I checked out in theaters was called The Return. This is a historical drama. It's directed by Umberto Pasolini, which I've never seen any of his previous works. I saw that he's done 3 other films, but I've never heard of any of them, to be honest. The film stars Charlie Plummer, Juliette Binoche, and Ray Fiennes. Now, this is a retelling of Homer's Odyssey, and it's about Odysseus, who washes upon shore of Ithaca 20 years later after fighting in the Trojan War, and the kingdom has changed. He is a king, but his wife doesn't actually recognize him. Now, I didn't see a trailer for this film. I went into it pretty blind, but I knew the premise behind it. I knew it was a smaller studio, Bleecker Street, and I didn't know, but afterwards I did read that this is actually a retelling. So I'm assuming there's a lot of made up things in here and things that they made up for like dramatization. Now, in this movie, Charlie Plummer is the king's son, and he is ticked that his father hasn't came back, doesn't like his father or respect him whatsoever. The wife here, played by Juliette Binoche, she has not remarried. She has all these suitors who are wanting to actually get with her, but mainly for her wealth rather than love. They live in this castle on top of this cliff there in Ithaca, and there's a lot of things really changing within the kingdom. You have Odysseus, who washes upon shore. He is very old at this point, and he's got a beard, and he's just very much, you can tell that he's gone through the ringer with war. He's got all these scars on him. And throughout, he's really just trying to prove to his wife that he is who he says he is. Now, this is a movie that has lots of dialogue. It's a very hard dialogue type of film, and you have to pay attention. It's not like Shakespearean dialogue, but it is simple dialogue that you have to follow as this film is going along. There's not really a lot going on. This movie takes a lot to really start up and get going. I would say about an hour in, there's some action that kind of makes the film shift just a little bit, and then it kind of goes back to its pacing. I think the pacing is just right for what it is. There's not a lot of action, so you can't really expect that. From a choreography standpoint, I think there are times where the choreography isn't too bad. I think towards the third act, there was some choreography that felt a little bit cheesy, a little bit off the way that they made that final scene. I wasn't really into it as much. I was kind of laughing, to be honest with you. And I know there was a couple other people that were laughing as well, where just that combat scene it felt kind of off to me. I think Ray Fiennes did a pretty good job in his role, and I think Charlie Plummer did a pretty good job for what he was given. I think that he is an actor that I honestly haven't seen too much of, but I've seen him in a couple films this year, and I thought that he did a pretty good job, even in that last film that I watched him in. Even within this film, he does a pretty good job as well. Juliette Binoche, I'm not really familiar with her, but I thought she did a pretty good job as well. It's definitely shot well, from the cliffs to the grassy areas to just kind of soaking in the atmosphere. You have some people that live in like these straw little huts, and you can really tell during that time period, obviously, that, you know, there are some people that are really poor, and then they have to kind of hunt for their food, and just little tidbits in there that they kind of throw in there. I think for some audience members, this may be a little bit boring because there's not really much action. I think some people could go into this and think, oh, there's going to be all this fighting and blood and guts and everything really going on and all this betrayals and such, and it's not really that kind of a movie, really. It really has a slower pace to it. But I think you have to really be invested in the characters themselves, Ray Fiennes' character himself, and just kind of what's really going on. There isn't really much of a soundtrack. It's very quiet, and a lot of times when the dialogue is going on, there's a lot of quiet moments that don't really have any background music to it. Some of the lighting is very dark at times, and mainly because they are in this castle and they just have like lit by fire. So there's a lot of darker kind of moments within that little castle that they're in. And then you have like nature shots where they're out during the daytime and they capture like the grassy lands, which I did appreciate about the film. It's a film that I can say that I think that it's worth a watch. I don't know how much rewatch value it actually has. I don't know if it's something I would rush to watch again, but I wouldn't be opposed to checking it out again. It's a story that is pretty simple for the most part, and it's just not a film that has a lot of action. It's more so a very heavy dialogue film. So if you're looking for something like that and a retelling of Homer's Odyssey, then I would say check it out. I would give it a score of 3 out of 5, but it's probably most likely a one-time watch with possibly a rewatch in the future. I don't think it's something that I can watch time and time again, though. And last but not least, we finally saw Megalopolis, and I was really reluctant to watch this film. So many bad reviews, but I was like, all right, let's give it a shot. And don't hang me with a noose here, but I've never seen a Francis Ford Coppola movie ever. So I've missed out on Godfather and apparently some of his other classic movies. Never seen any of them. So this is my first experience, and to be honest, I feel like it could be my last experience because I didn't like this movie whatsoever. It has a lot of stars in it. It has Adam Driver in it, Lawrence Fishburne, Aubrey Plaza, many others, Shia LaBeouf as well. There's a lot of random characters in here. It's a very ambitious movie, I will say that. It's about a guy named Cesaro, I think it's his name, Caesar. Caesar is his name, played by Adam Driver, in which he wants to build the city, and then he has this opponent, Cesaro, I think that's his name, and this guy basically wants to do the opposite of his plan. He wants to build like a casino, and they have like these differences of how they want to, I guess, like build these cities, so to speak. There's a lot of like corruption in here. There's this older character played by Jon Voight who like owns all this money, and you have Shia LaBeouf who wants to become the CEO. You have Aubrey Plaza in here who is very manipulative of Adam Driver. You have Natalie Emmanuel who is the daughter of this other guy that Caesar that doesn't like him or whatever, who is the guy that wants to build the casino. And they have like all this stuff kind of going on. It's a very political kind of movie. It's ambitious in the way it's shot. I mean, there's drama going on, but you have to be really invested in the drama and the characters. And to be honest, I really wasn't. I mean, there's definitely some artsy moments in here and some weird moments where Adam Driver's character can like stop time, and it's kind of weird like how that kind of happens. It was a very hard movie to really get into and really be focused in on. There's a lot of spectacle kind of moments where they kind of make it very like there's like a part where there's a scandalous part that involves like AI, which, you know, it kind of goes into certain things that we're dealing with right now with AI. And then there's also like police brutality in it, which obviously we face things like that in times of now. So there's some modern things that he put in this film that we're kind of facing right now. So on that front, I mean, it's ambitious. There's a lot of things with that. But the story to me just didn't really come together. It just wasn't all that interesting. I think there's ideas in here that were interesting, but it feels like there's certain things in here that maybe were cut and just kind of pasted together. There's certain scenes that are super awkward, like dialogue-wise, and just like some of the lines that some people say, like it just doesn't feel like natural dialogue whatsoever. Like Shia LaBeouf, he has a weird saying that he says like towards the beginning of the film. He has a weird scene with Aubrey Plaza as well, in which apparently she's his aunt, and it just was a really wild scene, to be honest with you. I did like Aubrey Plaza's performance, believe it or not, even though she has some stupid lines at times. Really, all the characters do, to be honest with you. But, I mean, overall, it just was a big mess. I can't say it was a fun mess either. I mean, laughing-wise or, like, comedy-wise, like, it didn't really hit for me. And the ending, I just was like, okay. I mean, did a lot really change, you know, by the end? I didn't feel like a lot did. I felt like there were certain issues that were brought upon in which the townsfolk that didn't like this whole idea of the city that Adam Driver was trying to build and trying to make better in his eyes. And Shia LaBeouf, with him kind of involving himself with these people, I mean, there's certain glimpses that kind of show them like riding against him, and then he's trying to explain to these people like, hey, like, you know, I'm trying to make it better tomorrow. There's certain things where I can, again, we can relate to that to like now in like today's times, but I don't know, it doesn't come together. It's just a big mess. It's a big miss. I definitely can't recommend it. It's definitely one of the worst films I've seen this year. So I'm going to give this one a score of 1 out of 5. I mean, again, there's a lot of ideas here. I think maybe if there's like a longer cut where like certain things are clarified and there's more of kind of like the central idea coming together, I mean, maybe it works a little bit more, but a 2 hour and 18-minute runtime, I just don't think it comes together. I think there's just too much from like the editing and switching from different transitioning that it just didn't work for me. It just was a complete mess. I can't recommend it whatsoever. So those are all the films that I've checked out recently. Let me know in the comments, have you checked out any of these? Or if you haven't checked them out yet, are you interested in checking any of them out? Thank you guys for watching as always, and I will see you guys next time.